"Are you sure about this, Chris?" my friend Mark asked as we wrestled a large sheet of plywood into place, creating a new wall for the haunted maze. "This is intense." "It has to be intense, Mark," I replied with a grin. "It has to be un-Debbie-like. It has to be unforgettable." The neighbors, of course, were curious. They'd see the deliveries, the boxes piled up in my garage, and they'd ask questions. "Just home renovations," I'd say vaguely. "Redecorating. You know how it is." Some of the deliveries were less discreet. One particular one involved a life-sized animatronic Frankenstein's monster. "That's a large ornament?" asked the delivery driver, after weeks of intense work, of secret construction. The entrance was marked by a creaking wrought iron gate, adorned with a sign that read, "Horror Manor. Enter at your own risk." For me, Halloween wasn't just a holiday. It was a calling. It was a chance to unleash my inner child, to embrace the spooky, the silly, and the slightly macabre. And my front yard was my canvas. Every year I'd transform it into a Halloween wonderland, a miniature spectacle of fright and fun that drew visitors from all over the neighborhood. There was the graveyard scene, complete with homemade tombstones, strategically placed skeletons, and a fog machine that created an eerie, ground-hugging mist. There were the animatronic creatures, a snarling werewolf, a cackling witch, a giant spider that dropped down from the eaves, scaring the unsuspecting trick-or-treaters, and, occasionally, their parents. There were the lights, the sound effects, the carefully curated playlist of spooky tunes that filled the night air. It was a labor of love, a project that took weeks of planning and preparation, but it was worth it. The joy on the kids' faces, the shrieks of delight, the laughter and camaraderie. It was what Halloween was all about. Halloween was my thing. It wasn't just about the candy and costumes. It was about creating an experience, a spooky, fun, immersive world for the whole neighborhood. It was about bringing people together. Apparently, in Willow Creek Estates, that was a violation of HOA policy, I thought, as I surveyed my meticulously crafted Halloween display, a sense of pride swelling within me. It was a tradition, a neighborhood institution, a testament to the power of imagination and the enduring appeal of a good scare. Little did I know, my reign as the Halloween king of Willow Creek Estates was about to be challenged by the queen of beige and boredom. I just didn't realize how quickly or how ruthlessly she'd strike. It wasn't the Halloween decorations that first alerted me to her presence. It was, surprisingly, the bird bath. I'd recently bought and installed a tasteful stone bird bath. Deborah Debbie Whitmore. Picture a woman whose wardrobe consisted entirely of sensible slacks and pastel cardigans, whose spirit animal was a perfectly pruned boxwood hedge, and whose favorite pastime was enforcing the HOA's endless list of rules and regulations. She was the self-proclaimed guardian of neighborhood aesthetics, the queen of tasteful, and, unfortunately for me, the president of the Willow Creek Estates HOA. She'd appeared, clipboard in hand, as I was filling said bird bath. "Mr. Carter," she began, her voice tight and disapproving. "Is that new?" I confirmed it was. "Did you get it approved by the Architectural Review Committee?" I blinked. "It's a bird bath. It's a garden feature, Mr. Carter, and as such requires approval. You'll need to submit Form 34B in triplicate, along with detailed schematics and a color swatch that matches one of the approved neighborhood shades." This, I realized, was going to be a problem. The HOA meeting was a masterclass in soul-crushing bureaucracy. The community center's multi-purpose room, with its beige walls and uncomfortable folding chairs, was filled with the usual assortment of residents, most of whom looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Debbie Whitmore, perched at the head table like a queen on her throne, presided over the proceedings with an air of grim determination. The agenda, as always, was a laundry list of petty grievances and absurd regulations. There was a lengthy discussion about the proper placement of garbage cans on collection day. Apparently, they had to be completely concealed from view at all times. There was a heated debate about the acceptable height for garden fences, no more than 4 feet, to ensure maximum neighborhood visibility. And then came the main event, the Halloween decorations. Debbie launched into a prepared speech, her voice dripping with disdain. "It has come to the attention of the board," she declared, "that some residents have been engaging in excessive Halloween displays. These tacky decorations lower property values, disrupt the peace and quiet of our community, and, frankly, are an affront to good taste." She projected a series of photos onto the screen, showcasing various Halloween displays from around the neighborhood, including, of course, my own. She pointed out the gaudy inflatables, the disturbing animatronics, and the excessive use of flashing lights, her voice rising with each carefully chosen adjective. "This is ridiculous," I thought, my internal monologue growing increasingly indignant. "My decorations aren't tacky, they're fun. They're for the kids, for the community, for the spirit of Halloween." I tried to reason with her. I pointed out that Halloween was a beloved tradition, that my decorations brought joy to the neighborhood children, that I always took them down promptly after the holiday. I even, in a moment of desperation, tried to argue that my graveyard scene was educational, teaching kids about history and, well, skeletons. But it was no use. Debbie Whitmore was not interested in reason, in logic, or in the concept of fun. She was interested in rules, in regulations, and in maintaining her iron grip on the aesthetic soul of Willow Creek Estates. "We must keep the neighborhood classy," she declared, to much nodding from her cronies. I pointed out that Christmas seemed to get a pass, despite often being far more visually intense. "Christmas is traditional," she spat back. "Halloween is tacky." The motion to ban all seasonal yard decor that is deemed excessive, disruptive, or not in keeping with the community's aesthetic standards passed with a near unanimous vote. Debbie banged her gavel, a smug smile spreading across her face. The spirit of Halloween, it seemed, had been officially extinguished in Willow Creek Estates. I received the official HOA notice a few days later, a crisp white envelope containing a sternly worded letter, and a list of the new Halloween decoration guidelines. Inflatables were banned, animatronics were prohibited, flashing lights were restricted, fog machines were deemed a nuisance, and anything deemed excessive or tacky by the Architectural Review Committee, that is, Debbie Whitmore, was strictly forbidden. I stood in my living room, staring at the notice, a feeling of cold fury rising within me. I could comply, of course. I could pack away my decorations, surrender to Debbie's demands, and accept a Halloween devoid of any fun, any creativity, any spirit. But something inside me rebelled. This wasn't just about Halloween decorations. It was about principle. It was about the right to express my own individuality, to celebrate a beloved holiday without being harassed by a power-hungry, aesthetically challenged tyrant. If Debbie and the HOA wanted minimal and tasteful, then I'd give them minimal and tasteful. On the outside. But on the inside, I'd unleash a level of Halloween horror they'd never forget. I'd turn my house into a haunted attraction so terrifying, so immersive, so utterly un-Debbie-like that it would make her sensible shoes curl, I thought. A new idea, bold and wonderfully subversive, beginning to take shape in my mind. A haunted house. A full-blown, professionally designed, or at least enthusiastically amateur-designed, haunted house attraction contained entirely within my house. It was the perfect solution. It technically avoided the yard decoration ban. It was a way to exploit the HOA's rules, and it was, without a doubt, the most gloriously inappropriate response to Debbie Whitmore's war on Halloween that I could possibly imagine. Deborah Whitmore, you want a war on Halloween? You've got one. Prepare to be haunted, I declared internally, a surge of defiant energy coursing through me. It was time to escalate. It was time to fight back. It was time to unleash the full force of my Halloween-fueled revenge. My transformation from mild-mannered homeowner to master of horror began, as all great and slightly unhinged projects do, with the internet. I needed to learn the art of the haunted house, to understand the psychology of fear, to master the techniques of creating a truly terrifying and immersive experience. I delved into the world of professional haunted attractions, studying layouts, scare tactics, special effects, and, of course, safety regulations. I watched videos of elaborate haunted houses, read articles about the latest horror trends, and even joined a few online forums dedicated to amateur haunters. My browser history went from best Halloween yard decorations to haunted house design blueprints and where to buy realistic fake blood in bulk in record time, I chuckled as I navigated the surprisingly vast and passionate online community of horror enthusiasts. I learned about the importance of atmosphere, the use of lighting and sound to create suspense, and the art of the jump scare. I discovered a whole new vocabulary of horror terms: scare actors, animatronics, fog juice, and blacklight effects. I realized that creating a truly effective haunted house was not just about throwing a bunch of skeletons and cobwebs around. It was about crafting an experience, a journey into the heart of fear. I also, of course, researched the legal and safety aspects of my project. I needed to make sure that my haunted house, however terrifying, was also perfectly safe and compliant with all applicable building codes and fire regulations. I didn't want to actually hurt anyone, just scare them a little. And, of course, avoid any actual legal trouble with the city. The HOA was enough to deal with. The transformation of my perfectly ordinary suburban house into Horror Manor was a clandestine operation, a covert project conducted under the watchful and increasingly suspicious eyes of Deborah Whitmore and the HOA. I started by reinforcing the walls of the first floor, adding extra supports and soundproofing to contain the screams, both real and simulated. I blacked out the windows, covering them with thick, opaque material to create a sense of darkness and claustrophobia. I began constructing secret rooms and passageways, using temporary walls, curtains, and strategically placed furniture to create a disorienting and unpredictable maze. The entire project had to be conducted with utmost secrecy. I worked mostly at night, under the cover of darkness, using battery-powered tools to minimize noise. I had deliveries made to a friend's house, then smuggled the materials into my own house in unmarked boxes. I enlisted the help of a few close friends, fellow Halloween enthusiasts who were both amused and slightly terrified by my plan. They swore an oath of secrecy, promising not to reveal the details of my project to anyone, especially not to any members of the HOA. "Are you sure about this, Chris?" my friend Mark asked, as we wrestled a large sheet of plywood into place, creating a new wall for the haunted maze. "This is intense." "It has to be intense, Mark," I replied with a grin. "It has to be un-Debbie-like. It has to be unforgettable." We worked tirelessly, fueled by pizza, caffeine, and a shared desire for revenge. We transformed my living room into a creepy graveyard, my dining room into a mad scientist's laboratory, and my hallway into a claustrophobic tunnel of terror. It was a labor of love, a descent into madness, and a giant middle finger to the HOA's ban on Halloween fun. No haunted house is complete without props, and lots of them. I scoured online stores, Halloween shops, and even a few, slightly sketchy, prop warehouses, searching for the most terrifying, most realistic, most Debbie-infuriating decorations I could find. I acquired life-sized monsters, a snarling werewolf, a cackling witch, a zombie emerging from a coffin, and a surprisingly realistic animatronic clown, because, let's face it, clowns are inherently terrifying. I bought gallons of fake blood, bags of cobwebs, and an assortment of severed limbs, skulls, and other gruesome props. I also invested in some high-tech special effects. I purchased a professional-grade fog machine, capable of filling the entire first floor with a thick, eerie mist. I installed a motion-triggered lightning effect, complete with thunder sound effects, to create a sudden, shocking burst of light and noise. And I even, on a whim, bought a strobe light, because what's a haunted house without a good strobe light? The neighbors, of course, were curious. They'd see the deliveries, the boxes piled up in my garage, and they'd ask questions. Just home renovations, I'd say vaguely. Redecorating, you know how it is. Some of the deliveries were less discreet. One particular one involved a life-sized animatronic Frankenstein's monster. "That's a large ornament?" asked the delivery driver. The key was misdirection. By day, the house looked relatively normal. The windows were covered, yes, but I'd put up under-renovation signs, hoping to deflect suspicion. The real magic, the real horror, was hidden inside, waiting to be unleashed. After weeks of intense work, of secret construction, of carefully curated horror, Horror Manor was finally complete. It was a masterpiece of amateur haunted house design, a terrifying, immersive, and utterly over-the-top experience. The entrance was marked by a creaking, wrought-iron gate, borrowed from a friend who ran a theatrical prop company, adorned with a sign that read, "Horror Manor. Enter at your own risk." The first floor of my house had been transformed into a winding, disorienting maze, filled with scares, surprises, and a whole lot of fake blood. There was the graveyard scene, with its fog-shrouded tombstones and animatronic zombies. There was the mad scientist's laboratory, with its bubbling beakers, sparking electrodes, and a life-sized creature strapped to a table. There was the claustrophobic tunnel, filled with cobwebs, strobe lights, and the sound of screaming, pre-recorded, of course. And then there were the hidden speakers, strategically placed throughout the house, emitting a constant stream of creepy sound effects. Creaking doors, rattling chains, howling winds, and the occasional, blood-curdling scream. It was a sensory overload, a carefully orchestrated assault on the nerves, designed to terrify even the bravest of souls, or, at the very least, to seriously annoy Deborah Whitmore. It was terrifying. It was over the top. It was perfect. And it was all completely contained within my house, technically bypassing the HOA's ban on yard decorations, I thought, as I took a final tour of my creation, a feeling of triumphant satisfaction washing over me. It was a work of art, a monument to petty revenge, and a giant, spooky middle finger to the HOA's war on Halloween. And I couldn't wait to unleash it upon the unsuspecting residents of Willow Creek Estates. The grand opening of Horror Manor was, to put it mildly, a success. I'd spread the word through social media, local online forums, and a few strategically placed, and deliberately vague, flyers around the neighborhood. I'd even, just for fun, sent a personal invitation to Deborah Whitmore, inviting her to experience the newly renovated interior of my home. And the people came. They came in droves. Families with young children, teenagers seeking a thrill, and even a few curious and slightly apprehensive older residents, all lined up down the block, eager to experience the rumored terrors of Horror Manor. The atmosphere was electric, a mixture of excitement, anticipation, and a healthy dose of spooky fun. The fog machine was churning out a thick, eerie mist. The motion-triggered lightning effects flashed across the front of the house, and the hidden speakers emitted a constant stream of creepy sound effects. Kevin, my friend from the red carpet adventure, had volunteered to act as a greeter, dressed in a creepy butler costume and welcoming guests with a sinister smile. Even Max, my golden retriever, got in on the act, wearing a slightly ridiculous skeleton costume and greeting visitors with enthusiastic tail wags. And then, of course, there was Debbie. She arrived, as I'd expected, with a look of pure, unadulterated horror on her face. She'd apparently been taking her evening stroll, clipboard in hand, no doubt, searching for any stray leaf or improperly placed garden gnome. When she'd stumbled upon the scene, a line of people stretching down the block, the sounds of screams and laughter emanating from my house, and a giant, fog-shrouded facade that looked like something out of a horror movie, her reaction was priceless. This is an outrage," she shrieked, her voice reaching a pitch that could shatter glass and probably set off car alarms. She stormed towards the entrance, her sensible shoes clicking furiously on the pavement, her face a mask of apoplectic rage. "You've turned your house into a house of horrors. It's unacceptable." I emerged from behind a fog-shrouded tombstone, a repurposed Halloween prop. A picture of calm, unruffled composure. "Good evening, Debbie," I said, my voice dripping with feigned politeness. "I see you've discovered my interior renovations. What do you think?" I was going for a spooky yet immersive vibe. "It's a haunted house!" she roared, her face now a shade of purple that I'd previously only seen on particularly ripe eggplants. With monsters and screams and fake blood." She pointed a trembling finger at a particularly gruesome-looking prop, as if it were evidence of some heinous crime. "It's called immersive entertainment, Debbie," I corrected her gently. "It's all the rage. And, as I'm sure you're aware, the HOA guidelines specifically prohibit yard decorations. This," I gestured towards the interior of my house, "is all inside. Perfectly permissible." Watching Debbie's face contort with rage and disbelief was more satisfying than any tasteful Halloween decoration could ever be, I thought, struggling to suppress a laugh. She sputtered, she fumed, she threatened, but it was all for naught. Horror Manor was open for business, and Debbie Whitmore was powerless to stop it. Debbie, predictably, called an emergency HOA meeting, demanding the immediate closure of Horror Manor and a complete overhaul of the neighborhood's dangerously lax regulations on interior home renovations. She envisioned a swift condemnation, a unanimous vote to shut down my haunted house, a restoration of order and beige to Sunridge Estates. She was, as usual, in for a rude awakening. The meeting, held in the same beige-walled community center room, which I noticed was looking particularly drab in comparison to my newly renovated home, was a scene of utter chaos. Debbie, looking increasingly frantic and disheveled, presented a slideshow titled, "The Horrors of Halloween: Why Haunted Houses Destroy Community Values." The presentation was a masterpiece of fear-mongering and hyperbole, filled with blurry photos of my haunted house, exaggerated claims about its negative impact on children, and a series of increasingly unlikely scenarios. Slide 1. Increased risk of nightmares and psychological trauma. with a picture of a cartoon child hiding under a bed. Slide 2. Attracting undesirable elements, teenagers to our community. With a picture of teenagers looking suspiciously like they were having fun. Slide 3. Promotion of violence and gore, with a picture of a rubber prop axe. Slide 4. The complete and utter destruction of our neighborhood's tasteful aesthetic, with a picture of my house looking terrifyingly awesome next to a picture of a perfectly manicured, utterly boring beige house. Her arguments were met with a mixture of skepticism, amusement, and outright hostility. The other HOA members, it turned out, were not as enthusiastic about banning haunted houses as Debbie had hoped. Some were secretly impressed by my audacity. Others were simply tired of Debbie's constant complaining. And a few, I suspected, were secretly hoping I'd invite them over for a tour. While Debbie fumed and plotted, the rest of the neighborhood was embracing Horror Manor with open arms. What had started as a source of curiosity and amusement quickly became a point of local pride, a quirky attraction, a symbol of Sunridge Estate's slightly rebellious spirit. Families with young children, initially hesitant, were now lining up to experience the toned-down, kid-friendly version of the haunted house. Teenagers, seeking a thrill, were flocking to Horror Manor, their screams and laughter echoing through the neighborhood, much to Debbie's dismay. Even some of the older residents, the ones who'd initially sided with Debbie, started to come around, admitting that the haunted house was rather well done, and added a certain je ne sais quoi to the neighborhood. The local newspaper, always on the lookout for a good human interest story, ran a feature article titled "Suburban Home Transforms into Professional Haunted Attraction." The article described Horror Manor in glowing terms, highlighting its creative design, its immersive scares, and its surprisingly positive impact on the community. It included interviews with delighted residents, amused city officials, and, of course, a very, very unhappy Deborah Whitmore. It was a public relations triumph, a community relations coup, and a constant, unavoidable reminder of Debbie's defeat. The haunted house, once a source of controversy, was now a celebrated local landmark, a testament to the power of creativity, and a giant, spooky middle finger to the forces of HOA tyranny. Debbie, desperate to regain control, tried every trick in the book to shut down Horror Manor. She cited obscure noise ordinances. She claimed the house was a fire hazard. She even tried to argue that I was running an unlicensed commercial enterprise out of my home. But it was no use. The HOA's lawyer, the long-suffering Mr. Henderson, a recurring character in my suburban battles, it seemed, was forced to explain, yet again, that there was nothing they could do. The haunted house, he pointed out, was entirely inside my house. The HOA had no jurisdiction over interior renovations, and as long as I wasn't violating any city codes or safety regulations, I was free to do whatever I wanted within my own four walls. But, it's a haunted house, Debbie sputtered, her voice cracking with desperation. It's terrifying. Yes, Mr. Henderson replied with a sigh. It is, but it's also legal. And then, the final glorious twist. The city got involved. Not to shut me down, but to approve my haunted house. They'd received numerous calls from residents, praising Horror Manor as a fun and creative addition to the community, and they'd decided to officially recognize it as a seasonal community event. They sent me a letter congratulating me on my entrepreneurial spirit and my commitment to providing a unique and entertaining experience for the residents of Town Name. They even offered to help with traffic control and parking during peak hours, Debbie's attempt to use the city as a weapon against me had backfired spectacularly. She'd inadvertently turned my haunted house into a city-sanctioned event, a testament to the power of community support and a giant, spooky middle finger to her own authority. With the HOA powerless, the city supportive, and the neighborhood enthralled, Debbie Whitmore resorted to increasingly desperate and increasingly ridiculous measures to shut down Horror Manor. She called the city again, claiming that my haunted house was a public safety hazard, a fire trap, and a breeding ground for unsavory elements. The city, having already approved the house, politely informed her that they found no violations. She filed noise complaints, claiming that the screams and sound effects were disturbing the peace and violating the neighborhood's quiet enjoyment. The police, now familiar with my ongoing battle with Debbie, arrived, took a decibel reading, which was well within the legal limits, and then, to my amusement, asked if they could take a quick tour of the haunted house. They emerged a few minutes later, laughing and shaking their heads. "5 stars, one of the officers said, giving me a thumbs up. "Best haunted house I've seen in years." She even, in a moment of inspired lunacy, started warning the neighbors about the satanic influences of my haunted house, claiming that it was corrupting the youth and promoting devil worship. This, predictably, backfired spectacularly, attracting even more visitors, curious to see the satanic house that was causing such a stir. And then, of course, Horror Manor went viral. A local YouTuber, known for his reviews of haunted attractions, visited my house and filmed a walkthrough of the maze. He raved about the immersive atmosphere, the creative scares, and the surprisingly professional quality special effects. The video, posted online, quickly racked up millions of views, turning my suburban home into an internet sensation. The online comments were a goldmine of amusement. "This is the most epic HOA revenge story I've ever heard," one user wrote. "Give this man a medal," declared another. "I need to visit this place," a third commented. Haunted attraction websites started listing Horror Manor, ranking it among the top local haunts. Horror fans from all over the state started making pilgrimages to Willow Creek Estates, eager to experience the terrifying suburban masterpiece for themselves. And then, the ultimate validation. A famous horror actor, known for his roles in several iconic slasher films, saw the viral video and decided to pay a visit. He toured the haunted house, posed for photos with me and the scare actors, my friends in costume, and even posted a glowing review on his social media accounts, calling it one of the best DIY haunted houses I've ever seen. It was a surreal, unexpected, and utterly glorious turn of events. My act of petty revenge had transformed my house into a nationally recognized haunted attraction, a testament to the power of creativity, and a giant, spooky middle finger to Deborah Whitmore and her war on Halloween. The viral fame of Horror Manor, the glowing reviews, the celebrity endorsement, it was all too much for Deborah Whitmore. She'd been defeated, humiliated, and utterly outmaneuvered. Her reign of terror was over, her legacy a cautionary tale whispered among the residents of Willow Creek Estates. She resigned from the HOA, her letter of resignation a masterpiece of passive-aggressive self-pity, blaming everyone but herself for her downfall. She claimed she was the victim of a coordinated campaign of harassment, a neighborhood-wide conspiracy to undermine her authority, and a general decline in standards of decency and good taste. Nobody bought it. Her departure was met with a collective sigh of relief, followed by a slightly less spontaneous this time neighborhood party held naturally at Horror Manor. The spirit of Halloween, it seemed, had finally triumphed over the forces of beige conformity. And I wasn't about to rest on my laurels. Each year, Horror Manor grew. New rooms were added to the maze. The effects got better and more ambitious. One year, inspired by the Moat story, I even added a Lake of Despair section where guests had to cross on a rickety raft. It became the place to go at Halloween and a source of great community pride. And so I remained, the unlikely haunt master of Willow Creek Estates, the accidental creator of a suburban horror legend. My house, once just another beige box in a row of beige boxes, was now a destination, a symbol of victory, a testament to the power of creative rebellion. It was a few weeks before Halloween. I was standing in my living room, now permanently decorated with cobwebs and flickering candles, flipping a switch that activated a series of red LED lights, illuminating the Horror Manor sign above my front door. A new neighbor, a young couple who'd just moved in down the street, walked by. "Excuse me," the woman said. "We're new to the neighborhood. We were just wondering, what's the deal with this place?" I grinned. "It's a long story," I said. "But the short version is, I had a disagreement with the HOA about Halloween decorations." They laughed, intrigued. "Well," the man said, "it's certainly impressive." "It is," I agreed. "It is." Who knew that a ban on lawn decorations and a burning desire for revenge could lead to all this? I guess sometimes you just gotta turn your house into a haunted attraction to find your peace, I thought, as I watched the red lights flicker, casting an eerie glow over my, now permanently spooky, front yard. I raised my imaginary glass in a silent toast. To Horror Manor, may it forever stand as a monument to the triumph of spooky fun over HOA tyranny, and a warning to all future enforcers of suburban blandness.